All right. Hello. My name is Shane Brody. Hi. I'm traveling around the country talking to trans people. So today I'm here with a guest, and I would like her to introduce herself.
Hello. My name is Erin Palette. I am a Second Amendment activist, and I'm also very heavily involved in the queer community because I am the founder of Operation Blazing Sword, which is a firearms education charity that I founded literally the day after the Pulse massacre.
Oh, wow.
And I am also the national coordinator for the Pink Pistols, which is the largest pro-gun queer organization in the country.
Okay, so that's two organizations that you head up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So the first one was Blazing Swords.
Operation Blazing Sword.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Pulse massacre happened, and we were all in shock.
Right.
And what I saw was, well, on two sides, basically. The queer community, which has historically been anti-gun to gun reluctant, many of them thought, maybe I should get a gun. And
after that occurrence.
Well, after that, what you need to understand, I mean, you lived through it, but as a refresher, this was 2016.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of concern regarding the Trump presidency, which when he was elected only escalated. And so...
Yeah, there was a huge buy-up of pistols at that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ammo.
And so between the Pulse massacre, which I like to call our 9/11 moment, because prior to Pulse, most violence against queer people could be dismissed as wrong place, wrong time, or one person had a grudge against another person.
Yeah,
but
or the gay panic defense, the Twinkie defense.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Pulse was an attack upon us as a demographic, as opposed to either a target of opportunity or something very personalized. And so a lot of queer people felt that they were under attack or had the potential to be victimized. And that only increased after Trump's election. And my thoughts on that, regardless, I have the philosophy, join for the fear, but stay for the freedom. So for whatever reason you buy a gun.
I love that.
If you are afraid that you're going to be, loaded onto train cars and shipped off to a FEMA camp for gay conversion therapy, regardless of whether or not I think that's a founded concern, I encourage you to have that healthy distrust of the government and to legally arm yourself, as is your Second Amendment right. And so between those two things, I mean, I founded it after Pulse, but really that's where it kicked off after the election. So on the one hand, we've got a lot of queer people who for the first time are saying, maybe I should buy a gun, but I don't know where to go.
Right.
I don't feel comfortable because all my life I've been told that gun owners are far-right, homophobic white men who hate us and want us dead.
Right. And it's kind of intimidating for the first time to kind of walk into those gun shops.
It can be, yes.
Even though I've been a gun owner, sometimes I feel a little bit intimidated as well.
And simultaneously, on the right, not just on the right, but this is important.
I'm going to actually turn this down a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. You're hitting the top of it.
Okay. And so simultaneously, I saw a wonderful outpouring of compassion from gun owners who were saying, I don't...
Like conservative gun owners or just gun owners in general?
Well, gun owners in general, but gun ownership tends to skew conservative. And
or libertarian.
True.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that I saw stereotypical people on the right reaching out to stereotypical people on the left.
Interesting.
And they were saying, I don't care what your politics are.
Yeah.
I don't care who you sleep with or what you have between your legs or how you dress. What matters is that you are a human being and your life is precious and you deserve to know how to defend it.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn how to use a gun, contact me and I will take you to the range.
Wow.
And I will provide the ammunition, and I will bring the gun, and I will bring the ear protection, the air protection, pay the range fees. In other words, I will do everything. All you have to do is show up and learn, because I want to teach you.
Are you talking about just lay people or actual firearms instructors from an organization, or are you talking about your particular organization?
I'm talking about just gun owners in general.
Okay.
Now, some of them were certified instructors, but for the most part, they were just, the lay people.
Okay. Like people's neighbors.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how Operation Blazing Sword founded, because I saw this wonderful outpouring, but the way social media works, unless you interact with people, you don't see them that often. And so I knew that the queer people would be highly unlikely to see this generous offer.
Yeah.
And so
because we're kind of polarized, we're all in our bubbles.
Exactly. And the algorithm works to isolate us. And because I have a foot in both camps, I thought, well, this is fantastic.
And why do you have a foot in both camps?
Because I am both a gun owner and therefore a Second Amendment advocate, and I'm also transgender.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we get so talking about my about who I am and what I do that we skipped over that.
Well, there's a lot that you do, so let's try and cover a lot of it.
So because I have a foot in the queer camp and a foot in the gun owner camp, I thought, well, hey, I can be a bridge to make sure each side hears what the other is offering.
So for you, in your experience, trans is under a queer umbrella?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because some people might be confused about that.
Well, that's an entirely different topic.
Yeah.
But the short version is that LGBTQIA plus is such a mouthful.
Right.
And a lot of people have problems with it. Queer is a word. We already know how to say it.
Right.
And in my opinion, it covers everything. It's a nice umbrella.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. Yeah. I think some straight trans people might have a little bit of an issue with that, but I think for a lot of trans people, that fits.
Okay. And so Operation Blazing Sword was me taking the lists of the volunteer gun owners and making them visible to queer people. Wow. And I just thought it was
sharing of information too. I mean, that's a big deal. That you must be quite a diplomat,
Well, by necessity.
Yeah.
It's not anything I would choose.
Yeah.
People keep telling me to run for office, and I keep saying, you rotten so-and-so, why would you wish that upon me?
Yeah.
I don't, but I found myself at the spearhead of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so, well, this is what I've been called to do, apparently.
Yeah.
Right place, right time.
That's cool because, I think some people think that we got to wait for some organization to do something when, if you have a passion for something, you can just go ahead and do it. It looks like that's what you've been doing. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And even like if you're a shy person or awkward or you think that you can't deal with people, like I'm such a shy person and here I am interviewing people. You know what I mean? If you're shy, go ahead and go do something. Anyway, back to Blazing Swords.
Blazing Sword. And so I thought this was just going to be something that I would do in an afternoon.
Yeah.
I would have a list of about 100 names. I would publicize it. That would be my good deed for the day. Yeah. And I would continue on with my mundane life. And I couldn't have been more wrong. This took off like a rocket-powered avalanche. It was just amazing. By the time I was done, and I fell into bed like about 2:30 in the morning. So I'd been at it for 16 hours or so.
Yeah. People would be amazed how much work it takes to organize people.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, it's so much work.
And by that time, it had gotten too big just to be a Facebook post. So we had started making a Google map with all the names, and I had 2 volunteers who were processing the information. And so for months,
yay for tech workers, yay!
Yeah, they were all volunteer too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so for months afterwards, I was just inundated with emails and private messages from people volunteering. And so here we are. I think we're coming up on our 7th year.
7 years.
I do believe. And
is this primarily a Florida organization?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
It is a national nonprofit. We are a recognized charity by the IRS. We're a 501c3 tax-deductible charity. And
just getting there takes a lot of work, too. Yeah.
Really? We were lucky. We had it.
Okay.
We had our charity status by November of that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe it's easier than I think it is. Or maybe the people I've been listening to complain too much about it.
I had some very good legal help.
Oh, okay.
So that probably also had something to do with it. Thank you, David.
Awesome.
And so at this point, we have over 1,500 volunteers.
Okay.
In every
1,500 volunteers.
1,500 volunteers in every.
And they're willing to be on a list too.
Yes,
that's a thing.
Yes.
That's a
now,
thing.
Now some of them aren't on a list under their legal names. They create a throwaway Google account.
I see.
Which is I want to touch on that, but I also need to finish this statement.
Sure.
So every state in the country, every major metropolitan area has at least one, most likely more. We are actually international. We have several in Canada, 3 to 5. We've got 2 in Australia, where they're trying desperately to build a gun culture. There are some in Europe. So it's by the barest technical margins international, but we are international.
That's amazing because all these different places have such different gun laws. Even the states here, each state is so different. Yeah.
Well, we aren't trying to take the place of licensed trainers.
Yeah.
And so
this is peer-to-peer help.
Yes, it is. We are an educational charity. And so the idea is we are removing ignorance. We are teaching people how to safely handle guns. Because, as I'm very fond of saying, we don't believe in abstinence-only sex education.
Right.
Why then do we believe in abstinence-only firearms education?
Right.
And I believe that's wrong. I believe, just for pure safety's sake, every teenager should know how to unload a gun and render it clear.
Yeah.
And I think that could save lives.
Yeah.
And so what we are doing, it's just the very basics. Here is a pistol. Here is how it works. Here are Colonel Cooper's 4 rules of safety. Here is how you properly hold the weapon. Here's how you shoot it. All right, we've got a magazine. This is how you load it. This is how you. All right. Now let's squeeze.
I love your muscle memory there. You're like,
thank you. And let's fire about a magazine's worth.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how loud it is. You know what recoil is. All right, let's unload it. Let's show clear. All right, you have gone through the basics.
Yeah.
You can now make an informed decision as to whether or not firearms are right for you.
Right.
And if they aren't right for you, that's great.
Yeah.
Because we aren't trying to sell firearms. There's no point in that. We have no profit in it. We're always happy to see more gun owners, but it's an intensely personal decision. And so we aren't going to push for gun ownership.
Yeah. Safety is the first thing.
Yeah, safety and education.
Yeah.
And just so long as you know how firearms work, that's a win.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if you do decide that firearms are right for you and you want them in your life, well, if you've ever talked to a gun owner about getting a gun, it is very similar and very cute to the way you start talking with the girls about, okay, well, we've got to go get a dress and the matching shoes and the handbag and let's coordinate the jewelry.
Yeah.
You get a gunny talking about guns and it's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to get?
Yeah, it's very personal too. Like beyond the style of it, like the feel of a gun in your hand, it's very different. Like you pick up different ones and it's like, oh, this one doesn't feel right. And then you get one in your hand that feels right and it's like, oh, okay, I think that's the one I want.
So here's another one of my favorite analogies, which seems to resonate more with the women than with the men. long guns, by which I mean rifles and shotguns, they're a lot like coats. They just basically need to fit you, and that's it.
Right.
And so as long as it's not too long, it'll work.
Yeah.
Pistols are like shoes. You're going to have to try on a lot of them to find the one that's right for you, that fits your hand, that fits your carry style. Because if it's not comfortable in your hand, you're not going to practice. If it's not comfortable on your hip or wherever you carry, you're not going to carry it.
Right.
And this is a tool for safety. So you need to have it with you, and you need to be proficient with it. So it needs to be some degree of comfortable.
Right.
And so just like you wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a test drive, always test fire a pistol. Now, you may not be able to test fire that particular one,
Right.
but go to a range that rents them out.
Yeah.
Go to a range that rents them out. Try as many models as you can in as many calibers as you can, and get that experience so that you know which ones you like. Now, when I start instructing people, I start with a single action 22 revolver.
Oh, okay. Like a Wrangler or something?
Mine is a Ruger Bearcat.
Yeah, okay.
And
Ruger's Wrangler as well. It's like a little cowboy gun.
Yep. Well, mine's a little cowboy action as well.
Yep.
And for people who have never fired a gun, it looks scary. And they aren't sure what to do with it. And they're braced, pop. Oh, well, that was nothing.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Little 22, yeah.
And so there's hardly any report, hardly any recoil because it's a 22. And because it's a revolver, we don't have to worry about, okay, there's a live round in the chamber in case they decide they forget their training and they sweep someone.
Yes.
Or with a heavier revolver, sometimes happens if you don't have a good grip, it can kick back. And there can be some fatal accidents that way.
Speaking of that, could you just briefly mention those rules that you were talking about? Because you just mentioned sweeping and
Oh, goodness. See, I know them here, but I have to take a moment and think about them to put them into practice.
It's okay. We can edit this.
It's also made difficult because depending on the organization, some say 3, some say 5.
Yeah.
It's not really agreed upon. So let's see. Treat every firearm as if it's always loaded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep your finger away from off the trigger. Until you're ready to shoot.
It's amazing, like watching movies now and seeing how like everybody has their finger on the trigger. You know. Yeah.
Never point. No, I'm sorry. That one's number 4. Number 3 is be aware of your target and what's behind it.
Right.
In case you miss or in case you've got a heavy round that overpenetrates. You've got to have a good backstop for safety.
Yeah.
And the 4th rule is never point the gun at anything you don't want to destroy. And so colloquially, that's known as muzzling because the end of the gun is the muzzle. And so if I sweep you with it, if I point it at you, that's known as muzzling.
Right.
And even if the gun has been proven to be unloaded, it's a violation of the rule.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly rude.
Yeah, right.
And so the very interesting thing about Cooper's 4 rules is that even if you accidentally break one of them, you'll probably be okay. It actually takes breaking 2 of them to really cause a problem.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you though, if other gun owners see you do that, they're going to give you some crap.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they're going to say something because everybody that I've ever met who's a gun owner is about safety. You know. Yeah, that's the first thing.
So yes, I like to start them off at a 22 revolver.
Yeah.
And then I move up to a 380. And then we get to the 9mm. And then 38, 357 Magnum, and then I've got a 45.
Oh my!
And so
that's a big boomstick.
It can be.
Yeah.
And so it's all about giving them that little nibble so they know which one is right for them.
Yeah. The first gun class that I took was with the NRA. I had to take it in order to go into the field in Alaska as a geologist. And it was great. It was wonderful. It scared the crap out of me though, because they they want you to not anticipate what you're shooting. And so they had us with a shotgun with a slug in it, but we didn't know which chamber it was in. I think it was a side-by-side double barrel. And so you had to just fire it. And wow, when the slug came out, I was like, wow, that's really strong. Mm-hmm. But I was glad for the experience because, you know, you need that kind of firepower if you go into the bush, mm-hmm. basically. You need a bigger caliber weapons. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, say what you will about the NRA, and believe me, a lot can be said, and a lot of it is deserved. But their training programs are fantastic.
Excellent.
And are nationally recognized. They are the bar at which safety training and educational programs are set.
Yeah, absolutely. So most recently I was living in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I took a reloading class through the NRA, which was great because there has been an ammo shortage. I'm not sure all the details of that, but there was definitely an ammo shortage.
Well, 2020 happened.
Yeah. Yeah, COVID and shutdowns of factories and that sort of thing. And also, when the factories got going again, they were producing low quality, I feel like, ammo. There was a lot of duds, a lot of, bullets that were out of the casing and, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You just open a box and you see that. So I was not trusting what was going on. So I was trying to learn how to reload. But doing this project, I had to give up that dream, at least temporarily, about becoming a reloader. Anyway, but it was so fun taking the class. It was like taking a really, really cool chemistry class. Basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know the NRA taught reloading classes.
Oh, yeah. Well, up in Fairbanks, they do. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so where at what stage are we at with Blazing Sword? So you talked about kind of the beginnings of it, mm-hmm. and having a list of instructors, and mm-hmm. Did you find that there was a good response in the community? Did some people not appreciate your work as much, maybe?
Yes to both.
Okay. All right. That's what I want to hear.
Yes, we have had a fantastic response because people who previously wouldn't have looked at a gun have sought education and training and have gone on to purchase firearms.
And probably further training too.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Primarily it's for defense at home, mm-hmm. but I do know that several people have gone on to get a concealed carry permit mm-hmm. and have a carry pistol.
Yeah.
Others have gone on to get a hunting permit, a hunting rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's just been a growth of an underrepresented demographic mm-hmm. into the firearms community.
Yeah.
And so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we have grown every year. The numbers are a bit squirrely for 2020 because of 2020.
Yeah.
But prior to
a lot of the ranges shut down for a while?
They were.
Yeah. I'm imagining there's a lot of indoor ranges, maybe not so much outdoor ranges.
Yeah. Well, so up to 2019, we had gotten very steady growth. Mm-hmm. And I only go by what is reported to me. I don't require people to out themselves. There are some people who wish to remain in the gun cabinet because they have family.
That's hilarious.
Thank you. Because they have family or friends or a job.
Yeah.
And if it was known that they were a gun owner, it could damage those relationships.
So weird.
And so, the queer community, we know about the danger of being outed. Yeah. And so I respect that. And if people don't want to out themselves as having gotten training, I'm not going to require that.
Yeah.
I only ask that if you were comfortable doing so and you had a good experience, well, actually, if you had a bad experience, I definitely want to know about it. Right. But if you're comfortable, please let me know so that I can add it to our metrics. I can see how we're doing. And so reported growth was very good and very steady. And in 2019, we were training at least one person a week.
Great.
So,
Do you mean locally or?
no, I mean nationally.
Oh, okay.
But again, I have to stress that's just reported. I don't know how many other people wanted it kept on the DL, and that's fine.
Yeah. What kind of friction have you encountered, if any?
From which side?
Specific. Well, it could be from the gun owner side, or it could be from the the queer community or trans community itself.
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
So, all right.
You're in a tough position. Yeah.
It's not, well, I thought you meant I'm in a tough position trying to explain it. But you mean politically? Yes, I am. I'm too liberal for the conservatives, and I'm too conservative for the liberals. If I had to pigeonhole myself, I would say that I'm more libertarian than anything else.
And libertarian isn't like necessarily a party affiliation or something like that. It just means you're more about freedom rather than control.
Yes, I am absolutely in favor of more freedom, more individual freedom, and less regulation, less authoritarianism.
Right.
So that's where I stand politically.
Thank God.
And that's how I try to have our organizations, so that they are big tent.
Yes.
And inclusive and welcoming to everyone.
Well, it sounds like it. I mean, you're getting conservatives together with more leftist, possibly liberal people. You're getting straight people and queer people and trans people together. I mean, that's really cool. That's so cool.
It is. One of the interesting things about being a teacher is that when you teach, you also learn. And so when I get these two sides who are very different and they come together, they learn about each other. It's not just about the guns, but it's about humanizing.
Yeah.
And there are so many times when one side will say, hey, I thought you were this really bad stereotype.
Right.
But it turns out you're not. And we've got a lot more in common than we have in difference.
Right.
And that's something that we sorely need. We needed it 7 years ago. We really need it now.
We really need it now, yeah.
And so it's all about seeing our, I don't want to say political opponents, but people who have different viewpoints, not seeing them as the enemy, not seeing them as the other.
Yeah.
We need to see them as human beings, and we need to value that.
And sometimes your own personal values don't actually coincide with party affiliation or anything like that. You can be a conservative person without, going along with whatever social conservatives are doing to harm other people, which that's my personal opinion of what's happening right now, unfortunately.
I have a friend who's very conservative, and he is, well, he's very tolerant and welcoming and accepting towards queer people, but he was one of the very first people to sign up for Blazing Sword, and he taught one of our very first students. And that student went on to have a concealed carry permit and get a hunting rifle. Awesome. And so he is involved in just all aspects of the Second Amendment, and in fact started a chapter in North Carolina.
You're making activists and teachers out there.
Yes. And
that's great.
And so despite the fact that the volunteer is very conservative, and the student he taught is pretty darn liberal, and you would think, based on what our media tells us, that they would hate each other, they're actually very good friends.
Yeah.
And so the student will shoot a deer and is also a fantastic chef. And so will, cook some of the venison and bring it over and hang out with the instructor and his wife.
Earlier when just like a couple minutes ago, I was thinking of recipe sharing. So that's hilarious that you say that. Because that's another thing that's happened. There's been some sharing that way of like different kinds of skills like prepping and cooking and canning and that sort of thing that is sort of crossed ideological lines. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In fact, prepping is how I came into gun ownership. I have always been pro-gun. Mm-hmm. My father is he's retired, so he was a career Army officer. Mm-hmm. We've always had guns in the house.
Yeah, of course.
And from a very young age, I want to say 5 or 6, I was given the safety talk about guns. Yeah, they were unloaded.
And there are people who are just horrified about that, I would imagine.
Most likely.
Yeah.
But again, why are we teaching abstinence-only gun education?
Yeah.
And
what do you mean by that? Abstinence-only education. Some people might understand the reference. Other people might not.
Okay. Abstinence-only sex education is very simply, don't have sex. Mm-hmm. You're too young.
Okay.
You shouldn't have it. This is for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about teenagers, mm-hmm. especially with their hormones raging, they will do what they want.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to necessarily be sex. They're doing other things too, and mm-hmm. Curiosity about it. Maybe they aren't having sex, but they want knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But if you tell them not to do something, that's like a laser pointer for a cat. Yes. They will want to do it.
Right.
And
that's usually when we hear these tragedies of kids, finding guns that are
right.
It's curiosity, and safety was not instilled mm-hmm. in that child.
So they find something. It's forbidden. It's yes. exotic. They want to play with it. Mm-hmm. And the difference is, instead of someone getting pregnant, someone gets shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I firmly believe that gun safety should be taught at a young age.
Yeah.
And again, many things can be said about the NRA, but their Eddie Eagle program is fantastic. And it's designed for kids. And the 3 main principles are, well, if you find a gun, stop, don't touch, run away, and get a grown-up.
Yeah.
That's great for children.
Yeah.
Tell them not to do it, and you should tell them why. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
They don't need to know how guns work,
yeah.
but they need to know that they exist and that they can be dangerous. And here's what you do when you encounter them.
Yeah.
I like to think, we have driver's ed. Why can't we have firearms education? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so for elementary school, we've got the Eddie Eagle, don't touch.
Yeah.
For middle school, we've got, here's how they work. Not them actually doing it, but here's the principle behind it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so here's how you make them safe. Mm-hmm. So in case you encounter one, in case there's a mass shooter, God forbid, and someone wrestles the gun out of his hand, here's how you drop the magazine, rack the slide, render it safe.
Wow.
That's all you need to know.
Wow.
Then
I'd like to know that.
and
I need more training.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Oh, and then for high school, we can have the actual shooting. I mean, I'm dating myself here, but I do come from a time when high schools did have shooting teams, and I think we should bring that back.
Yeah.
And so we can bring back the shooting team, and that would actually...
That's an Olympic sport, too.
It is.
So I went to the University of Alaska. That's where I finished my undergraduate degree, and they have some of the best shooters in the country. I mean, they're biathletes, so they do... cross-country skiing, Nordic skiing, and also shooting, and then just pure shooting sports. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. And women and men, young mm-hmm. women and men. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's absolutely gender neutral.
Yep. Yep.
And
it's the equalizer, in fact.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what Sam Colt said. and so I would like to see that, and then that could, in the same way that when you graduate driver's ed, it helps you get your learner's permit, and it lowers your insurance rates. Then this could work in some way. I'm still working it out. Towards getting your concealed carry permit.
Some states, you don't need a concealed carry permit. Is that required here in Florida?
For the moment.
Okay. Because there's something called constitutional carry, which you don't need a permit for.
Constitutional carry and permitless carry, they are slightly different, but really the difference is only of note to the lawyers. I'm not even going to get into it. It's such a fine point.
Yeah, right.
But as of this recording, 25 states, so half of them,
Yeah.
you do not need a permit, a license from the state, in order to carry a weapon for defense. And you can carry it concealed or you can carry it openly.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Florida does not have that, and we aren't going to have it for a while. I have said that I think we're going to be one of the last southern states to get it. People from North Carolina beg to differ. Because
Why is that? A change of demographics, possibly?
I'm not sure because I'm not North Carolinian.
Okay.
But as an example, North Carolina has a Jim Crow law called the pistol purchase permit.
Oh, no.
And just like the name says, before you can purchase a pistol, you have to go to your local sheriff who will then sign off on it. And there's nothing in the law which indicates what the sheriff needs to do. It's just, are you of good moral character? Which is so vague as to be unenforceable.
So subjective. Sounds totally racist.
Exactly. That was the point.
Yeah.
And so, in the battle days of Jim Crow, a sheriff could go, well, you're a black person. I don't think you're of sufficient moral character. Denied.
Right.
And this law, they have tried to get it repealed, the various gun rights laws.
That's not equal protection under the law.
No, it's not.
No.
And so far, they haven't had any luck repealing it.
And that you're talking about North Carolina there?
Yes, I'm talking about North Carolina. And so, as long as they've got this Jim Crow gun law, and honestly, the state seems very intent on hanging on to it. I imagine the North Carolinians are saying this is a good bellwether for whether or not they will allow just anyone to carry a gun.
So in that case, people could have weapons at home, but just not on them if they're out in public. Is that the case?
Are we talking about constitutional carry, or are we talking about the pistol purchase permit?
Oh, I'm probably getting confused here. Probably the, I guess, well, I'm just wondering what's going on with North Carolina, I guess. So you're not allowed, if the sheriff doesn't sign off on your pistol carry, then you can't.
You can't buy a pistol.
Oh, you just can't buy one.
Yes, and you have to get one of these for every pistol you wish to purchase.
Oh, see, I thought it was about carrying, but it's about purchasing too.
Yes, it's about ownership.
That's crazy.
Well, again, pistols can be carried. They are portable. They are concealable.
Yeah, I know. Going across the Canadian border, they don't allow any pistols. Yeah, yeah.
So
no handguns.
So that's what's going on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Florida, people who know me know that I have a certain amount of venom when I talk about Miami Republicans.
Okay.
And
I know nothing about Florida and its politics. So what's that about?
Well, Florida, like a lot of high population states, is ruled by its cities.
Yes.
And Illinois is ruled by Chicago. We are ruled primarily by Miami.
Okay.
To a lesser extent, Orlando and Jacksonville, but primarily Miami.
Yeah.
And Miami has been a hotbed of drugs and gangs and gang violence since the 80s. And so despite the fact that there is a very strong conservative base in Miami because the Cuban element is very conservative.
Right. Immigrants that escaped Cuba.
Well, and their descendants, yes. Despite conservatism being nominally pro-gun, because they live in this city that is high crime and has been high crime for generations, even the Republicans are very pro-gun control. And so they are not likely to pass anything that is going to relinquish or lighten gun laws for quite some time.
And what laws would you like them to relax a little bit so that people can have more freedom? Specifically.
So my knee-jerk answer is all of them.
Okay.
But I understand that
I agree.
that doesn't answer your question, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with that.
Well, something that people can look up, on the internet.
So, I mean, I'm very much a fan of constitutional carry.
Yeah.
Despite this rigorous background check, you cannot carry into any establishment that gains 50% more of its income from selling alcohol.
Oh, okay.
And so this leads to some interesting gymnastics where you can go to a restaurant and you can sit at a table.
Okay.
But you can't sit at the bar.
Okay.
But that pretty much rolls out all nightclubs like Pulse.
Right.
And there are other states.
Aren't there celebrities that visit those clubs and have entourages that are armed?
Well, yes, but we know by now that the rich people and the celebrities, they're better than us.
Okay.
And they can get away with things that the little people can't.
I see. Okay.
I mean, Bloomberg never met a gun control law he didn't like, but he is surrounded by heavily armed bodyguards, and when he travels to Bermuda, which, being a British colony or territory or whatever, has very stringent gun control laws, he still has heavily armed bodyguards with him.
All those people do.
Rules for thee and not for me.
Right.
Now there are other states
Yeah.
which understand that just because you're in a bar, it doesn't mean you're going to go get drunk. And you can carry in a bar, you just can't get drunk while carrying.
Yeah.
Now, Florida, curiously enough...
Isn't there a kind of laws about that anyway? They're not supposed to serve drunk people?
What I'm getting at is that the law seems to be based on the premise that if you are a concealed carrier and you drink some alcohol, you're going to lose your inhibitions and shoot the place up.
Okay. So is there like a zero tolerance of any alcohol drinking in establishments like that?
So here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
You cannot carry into such a place. But to the best of my knowledge, I am not a lawyer.
Me neither.
You can get completely stinking drunk, throwing up, falling down. I mean, you're probably violating some public order statutes.
Yeah, I think so.
But the point being is that if you are that drunk and you're carrying, there is no additional penalty for it.
I see.
So you have two people equally falling down drunk. One has a gun, one doesn't. There's no additional penalty going to the armed drunkard. But you can't carry into a bar, even if you are the designated driver and you decide you're not going to drink anything alcoholic.
That's a weird collection of laws.
It is, and that's something that I would like to see repealed.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like somebody forgot that some weird laws were in there and then just tried to layer some other laws in there.
So what I would like to have is an exception, which I call designated defender. Just like designated driver, but designated defender. And I'm willing to go overboard on this.
I've never heard of that before.
And the idea is you can carry into a bar in Florida, so long as you are, of course, a legal concealed carrier, and you do not consume any alcohol. I mean, you blow... I can't really say blow 000 because I understand there are some people with diabetic conditions who may blow higher. But the point being is that you don't drink anything. And so if you are completely sober, you should be able to carry into a bar.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
And so that is some legislation I'd really like to see passed.
Yeah.
I haven't had any luck yet, but I'm working on it.
So I think there's this cultural idea that if there's more guns out there, if more people are armed, then somehow we're going to have more gun violence. I was wondering what you think about that.
Oh, I wish I had my podcast co-host with me. He's an encyclopedia of these things.
I'm not looking for statistics or details, just kind of the general idea about that.
Okay. So, building on what we said before, concealed carriers are a highly tracked demographic.
Right. And hopefully highly trained as well, right?
That is the ideal, although I bristle at the thought of requirements, which is... All right, I can detour onto this briefly. I believe that training should be emphasized by peer pressure and not by government regulation.
Yeah.
Because the moment the government steps into anything, they can regulate it out of the reach of the common people.
Right.
Well, sure, you can own a gun, but first you have to have 1,000 hours training.
Right.
And that trainer is only there on the weekend.
And a lot of government programs are terrible.
Right.
Let's leave it to the experts, the actual firearms instructors out there in the world, not the government. No.
So we've got this very trackable demographic of firearms owners.
Yeah.
And anytime a gun owner misuses a gun, we know about it. The press finds out about it. The press reports it. In much the same way that when a police officer loses control of his firearm and leaves it in a bathroom, that sort of stuff, it's very hard to cover up.
Yeah.
If more guns equaled more shootings, then we would see that in that gun owners would have a spike in violent episodes that resulted in arrest or death. We don't see that. Concealed carriers are some of the safest people on the planet,
Right.
and we can prove it through crime statistics.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now, if we open firearms ownership to more people, then of course you are increasing the sample size, and that will increase the frequency of accidents and disasters. I'm not saying that everything will remain perfect.
Yeah.
But I will say
The
that
the striving for perfection it's impossible. It's usually by people who want to control something.
perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
If you try too hard to
Exactly.
make anything perfect, you'll never accomplish anything.
Exactly.
But I do believe that the concerns that constitutional carry will result in widespread death is wrong.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
That's nonsense.
I was here in Florida in the late 80s when concealed carry became possible. And I remember the hysterical assertions that it was going to lead to shootouts over parking spaces and blood in the streets and Wild West showdowns like High Noon. That's what I was assured would happen. It didn't happen. People primarily, I'm not even going to say people are primarily good. I'm going to say that people primarily stay to themselves.
Yeah.
They stay in their lane. They don't want to hurt people.
Right.
And sometimes it's because they're compassionate. Sometimes it's because this would bring more pain down on me than I need to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
My life is already complicated.
Yeah.
I don't need to deal with the cops right now.
Right.
And
And years of legal whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so most people are just trying to get through their lives.
Yeah.
And I think that the ones who...
It's a last resort. It's a last resort.
It is a last resort. And in fact, after becoming a gun owner, I have found that I am... I want to say calmer, but that's not really true. I've still got that anger reaction, but I realize, okay, I have a weapon that can result in death on me. I need to be more responsible because when you are unencumbered with the responsibility of a firearm, you can scream, you can yell, you can shout, "I'm gonna kill you,"
Right.
and you're just talking.
Right.
If you are carrying a gun, well, that's a threat.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's one of the things which was stressed to me when I was getting my concealed carry certification, that you need to let so many things go.
Yeah. Well, you're just taking responsibility is what you're doing. It's like people who are very skilled in martial arts. They can't just go slapping people around.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And so things which used to really provoke rage, it's just, it's not worth it.
Right.
It is just not worth it. Fine, you go on ahead. You cut me off. Yeah. You call me names. Sure.
Some people say that when more people are armed, people are generally a little bit more polite, a little bit more respectful, because they don't know if you're carrying, and why even start something?
That is something I've heard, that an armed society is a polite society. Right. I'm not 100% that it's correct, but in general, that
would be one of those slogans I was warning about.
Well, it goes hand in hand with why having an armed populace decreases crime. You're never going to completely get rid of crime.
No.
But another one of my sayings is concealed carry is herd immunity against crime.
Oh, interesting.
And when I came up with that, herd immunity was not as well known. The point being...
You're good at turning a phrase there.
Thank you so much. The point being is that if you are a criminal, you want to look for an easy target.
Yeah.
Because, hard targets can result in you getting hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least, you've wasted your time. You haven't made a profit.
Yeah. I once read a book by a famous criminal from about a century ago. He was a cat burglar, basically. He would stake out people's houses. He'd go hop from town to town. His name was, I believe, Jack Black. And it's not the comedian I'm talking about. It's a criminal from a long time ago. And he wrote this just compelling book, and he was talking about the best defense against robbery is a dog. You could do whatever you want to your house, but if there's a dog there, you can have a crappy house and he's not going to go in there.
Yeah. So criminals are opportunists.
Yeah, exactly.
He
wanted the easy hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, as cliche as this sounds, the best way not to be victimized is to not be an easy target.
Yeah.
And I realize how much it sounds like a cliche, but when you talk to people who are serving time in prison, and people interview them, what would you say? Because they're doing this in order to get privileges, get their sentence reduced. They will say, well, don't be an easy target.
Yeah.
And so...
don't look at your phone all the time.
My ultimate point here is that if a criminal doesn't know whether or not you have a gun, that really changes their metric.
It does.
Because even if you don't have a gun, you are still protected by that herd community.
That's right.
Herd immunity, because there are enough people who do that it might just not be worth it.
Yep. That's right. I agree.